You cross the finish line of a local 10-kilometer race. You are sweating, smiling, and feeling absolutely invincible. You eat a clean diet, you have zero chest pain, and your doctor just told you last month that your physical was perfect. Yet hiding deep inside your chest cavity, a massive, highly volatile 90% arterial blockage is quietly waiting to end your life. How is this physiologically possible? How does a perfectly healthy, athletic adult drop dead on a treadmill without a single warning sign? Because human biology does not care how fast you can run. Your cardiovascular system is a master of deception. It is so incredibly efficient at adapting to damage that it can physically mask a catastrophic blockage, keeping your blood flowing perfectly right up until the exact second it violently stops. This biological illusion is exactly why, for 50% of men and over 60% of women, the very first symptom of coronary heart disease is not angina or shortness of breath. The first symptom is sudden death. Today, we are going to strip away the chest wall and look at the terrifying mechanics of the healthy heart attack. I'm going to show you exactly how your arteries stretch to hide ticking time bombs, the difference between a mechanical clot and a physiological suffocation, and the undeniable imaging tests you must demand to see the invisible danger before it is too late. To understand why a perfectly tuned engine suddenly seizes, we must look at the fuel lines. The heart muscle demands more constant, uninterrupted oxygen than almost any other tissue in your body. To supply this oxygen, the heart is wrapped in a dedicated network of blood vessels known as the coronary arteries. I want you to envision these arteries not as a crown, but as the intricate root system of a massive oak tree. You have a right coronary artery and a left coronary artery. The left side branches into a massive critical vessel called the left anterior descending artery, or the LAD. In the cardiology ward and the emergency room, we do not call the LAD by its medical name. We call it the Widowmaker. The anatomy explains why. The LAD supplies the massive front and bottom walls of the left ventricle, which is the main pumping chamber that pushes blood to your entire body. If a tiny branch artery gets blocked, you lose a single leaf. But if the LAD gets blocked, you have taken a chainsaw to the trunk. The entire tree falls. A blockage here instantly decapitates the heart's ability to pump, leading to massive, rapid tissue death. But how does a deadly blockage form in someone who runs 3 miles a day? It begins at the microscopic level. A pristine artery is lined with a smooth, Teflon-like coating called the endothelium. Blood flows past it with zero friction. But life destroys Teflon. High blood pressure, elevated blood sugar, and even the sheer mechanical stress of massive blood volumes rushing through the pipes during intense cardiovascular exercise act like microscopic sandpaper. Your artery sustains a tiny microscopic scratch. To fix it, your body dispatches LDL cholesterol to the site, acting like biological spackle to fill the hole. Then, your immune system sends white blood cells called macrophages to inspect the repair. These cells gorge on the cholesterol, get trapped in the arterial wall, and turn into foam cells. Over the years, this toxic mixture of fat, calcium, and cellular waste hardens into a structure we call plaque. This is the birth of atherosclerosis. Statistically, heart disease is a systemic killer, but it strikes certain demographics with devastating disproportion. For instance, African American adults are nearly 30% more likely to die from cardiovascular disease than non-Hispanic white adults, largely due to unmanaged silent hypertension tearing away at that endothelial lining year after year. Now, here is the fatal misconception that costs millions of people their lives. When you imagine an artery getting clogged, you picture a bathroom sink pipe. You assume the gunk builds up on the inside, the pipe gets narrower and narrower, and you will eventually feel the water slowing down. You assume you will feel out of breath as the hole shrinks. That is logically sound, but it is biologically entirely incorrect. Your body is a master of adaptation. As the cholesterol plaque begins to grow inside the arterial wall, the artery itself actually stretches outward. It physically expands its outer walls to accommodate the growing tumor of fat, completely preserving the internal opening for the blood. We call this positive remodeling. It is a terrifying magic trick. It means you can have an artery that is literally choked with massive amounts of plaque, but the tube itself remains 100% wide open. You have totally normal blood flow. You experience absolutely zero symptoms. You can run a marathon and feel fantastic because the blood is still reaching the heart muscle. So, what flips the switch? If the blood is flowing, what causes the sudden healthy heart attack? It comes down to stability. Imagine that hidden plaque deposit is a blister covered by a microscopic, incredibly thin layer of skin. We call this a soft plaque. It is highly inflamed and highly volatile. If you experience a sudden spike in blood pressure from lifting a heavy weight or extreme physical exertion, the sheer mechanical force of the blood can literally rip that thin skin right off. The blister pops. This is a plaque rupture. The moment that plaque tears open, the highly toxic, inflammatory gunk inside spills directly into your bloodstream. Your body immediately panics. It interprets this rupture as a massive, bleeding open wound. It frantically dispatches millions of platelets to the site to form a blood clot and stop the bleeding. If you cut your arm, you want a clot. But if a massive clot rapidly forms inside a coronary artery, it acts exactly like a cork slammed into a wine bottle. In a matter of seconds, the blood flow hits a solid brick wall. The oxygen supply is instantly severed. This is a type 1 myocardial infarction. It was not the slow buildup of plaque that stopped the blood. It was the sudden, violent formation of a clot on top of a popped blister. But there is a second, entirely different mechanism of a heart attack. And this one frequently strikes endurance athletes and people pushing their physical limits. This is the type 2 myocardial infarction. Imagine a 50-year-old triathlete named David. David is in incredible shape, but genetically, he has a 50% blockage in a coronary artery. One afternoon, while running a grueling race in the heat, David doesn't feel the classic crushing chest pain. He just feels incredibly dizzy, profoundly nauseous, and completely drained of energy. He assumes he is just severely dehydrated. But when he is brought to the emergency room, doctors draw his blood and find extremely high levels of a protein called troponin. I want you to think of troponin like the glowing liquid inside a chemical glow stick. As long as the plastic casing is intact, the liquid stays inside. But if you snap the stick, the liquid leaks out. Your heart muscle cells are completely full of troponin. If those cells suffocate and die, their membranes snap open, and the troponin leaks directly into your bloodstream. David is actively having a heart attack, but when the cardiologist looks at his arteries on a screen, they do not find a popped blister or a massive blood clot. They just see a stable 50% blockage. Blood is still flowing. So how is the muscle dying? This is a classic supply and demand crisis. When David is sitting on his couch, a 50% blockage is completely irrelevant. The hose is crimped, but enough blood gets through to keep the heart perfectly happy. But when David is running a race, and his heart rate skyrockets to 170 beats per minute, his heart muscle is screaming for a massive fire hose worth of highly oxygenated blood. The crimped 50% artery can only deliver a garden hose worth. The mechanical demand vastly exceeds the physical supply. The heart muscle is essentially being strangled. We call this ischemia. This mismatch is often compounded if the patient slips into a hidden electrical arrhythmia like atrial fibrillation. In AFib, the top chambers of the heart quiver chaotically instead of pumping. When you combine a partially blocked pipe with a chaotic, rapid, inefficient heartbeat, the heart is beating so fast it cannot fill with blood properly. A type 2 heart attack is suffocation without a total blockage. This brings us to the famous 70% threshold in cardiology. As a general biological rule, you will almost never feel physical chest pain until an artery reaches roughly 70% occlusion. Below that, your heart effortlessly compensates. Above that, you might feel a heavy tightness in your chest when you walk up a flight of stairs, which magically disappears when you sit down and rest. This is called stable angina. It is your body's check engine light. But you cannot wait for the check engine light, because the vast majority of fatal heart attacks occur in people whose blockages were less than 50%. Soft, hidden 50% blisters are infinitely more likely to suddenly pop than massive, heavily calcified, stable blockages. So if you cannot feel a soft plaque and you can still run a 10K, is there any hope? Yes. Your heart has a miraculous hidden backup generator called collateral circulation. I want you to think of your main coronary arteries as massive, multi-lane interstate highways. If a traffic jam slowly builds up on the interstate over 10 years, the city planners, your body, will slowly pave tiny side streets to bypass the traffic. Your heart literally grows brand new, microscopic blood vessels to route blood around a severe blockage. This is exactly why a 75-year-old grandfather might survive a massive Widowmaker heart attack, while a 42-year-old executive dies instantly from the exact same blockage. The older heart had 30 years to slowly pave a network of side streets. In the younger person, the blister popped suddenly, the highway shut down, and there were 0 detours available. The heart died immediately. The absolute best way to force your body to build these biological side streets is through cardiovascular stress. Zone 2. Endurance training and high-intensity interval training physically force the heart to demand more blood, triggering the growth of this life-saving collateral network. Exercise buys you time. And in a cardiac event, time is the only currency that matters. In the emergency room, our mantra is, time is muscle. If a vessel is blocked for 20 minutes, irreversible cellular death begins. If it is blocked for 90 minutes, the living heart tissue permanently turns into dead scar tissue. Scar tissue does not pump. To save the muscle, you must ruthlessly identify the symptoms. For men, it is often the classic Hollywood presentation. An elephant sitting on the chest, pain radiating down the left arm, and a cold sweat. But for women, the symptoms are incredibly insidious and frequently misdiagnosed. Women often experience profound, unexplained fatigue, sudden shortness of breath, a feeling of deep dread, or pain that mimics severe acid reflux right between the shoulder blades. Never, ever ignore a sudden sense of impending doom. If the plumbing fails, you are rushed to the cath lab. A cardiologist performs a percutaneous coronary intervention, or PCI. We thread a tiny, hollow wire through the artery in your wrist, drive it all the way up into your heart, and inject a fluorescent dye to instantly illuminate the exact location of the clot. We push a microscopic balloon into the blockage, inflate it to 300 pounds of pressure per square inch to completely smash the plaque against the wall, and then deploy a stent, a rigid metal mesh scaffold that locks into the artery, permanently holding the pipe open and instantly restoring blood flow. But the ultimate goal of modern medicine is not to install a stent while you are having a heart attack. The goal is to find the fire before the house ever burns down. If you want to know if you are harboring a silent widowmaker, you must stop relying on standard cholesterol blood panels. A lipid panel only tells you the ingredients floating in your blood. It tells you absolutely nothing about whether those ingredients are actively sticking to the walls of your heart. You must demand two specific anatomical scans. First is the coronary artery calcium score, or CAC scan. It is a painless, 5-minute, incredibly cheap CT scan of your chest that acts like a metal detector for hardened calcium in your arteries. A score of 0 means your arteries are clear. A score of 400 means you are walking around with a massive, established burden of calcified plaque. But the CAC scan only sees hardened, old plaque. To see the soft, invisible, highly volatile blisters that cause sudden death in young runners, you need a CCTA, a coronary computed tomography angiogram. This advanced scan injects an iodine dye into your blood and takes three-dimensional, high-resolution photographs of your coronary arteries. It can literally see a non-calcified, soft plaque hiding inside a positively remodeled artery. It is the ultimate early warning system on planet Earth. The healthy heart attack is almost always a tragedy of ignorance. Your body is doing everything it can to adapt, to stretch, and to keep you moving. But it cannot protect you from a popped blister if you do not know it is there. Control your blood pressure to stop the mechanical tearing of your endothelium. Manage your blood sugar to extinguish systemic inflammation. Build your collateral side streets with targeted cardiovascular movement. Do not guess about the health of your heart. Demand the scans, use the technology we have, and intercept the threat before it ever has a chance to strike.